And welcome back to another edition of the Too Deep, an NFL podcast starring, of course, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager decked out in some sort of football.
Whoa.
What,
Petro.
Swagger?
I think I got my swagger back. That was that Tyrann Mathieu had the quote?
I think it was it him, or did it start with Kelsey? I can't remember which.
Oh, it might have been Kelsey. I've been getting some Chiefs paraphernalia on the bulk.
All right.
Last week it was Creed is good, and this is the swagger.
Yeah, I don't know where he finds this stuff at.
Listen, he's a man of many means, Jeff. Trust me, many means. Here, Eric Eager from Pro Football Focus. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHP in Kansas City, and a lot to get to as we briefly look back on Week 13 and look ahead to 14 as we broadcast live here and record for the podcast Thursday night. We got the Thursday night game going on. We'll get into the Steelers a little bit later on, Ben Roethlisberger, but let's start with the Monday night game. Epic as it was, the Buffalo Bills in a windstorm on a cold night get bested by the New England Patriots. This was the game of the week, Jeff. It's what everybody was looking for. Are the Bills in serious trouble since they didn't get it done against New England at home?
I don't think you need to start sounding alarms around that place just yet. I think if this season has taught us anything, it's that teams can be up and they can be down. But if you've got talent, if you've got coaching, that will win out eventually. And they've got both. And so a tough loss. But look, if you're playing in a tornado and you give up 14 points and your quarterback can't make enough plays, your offense can't make enough plays to get the job done, I'm not going to destroy this team because they lost by 4 points to a really good Patriots team that's been on a roll now with 7 straight wins. If anything, it's just, to me, it just tells you that if you want to be a champion, if you want to get to the Super Bowl, get out of the AFC, there's more teams to go through than Kansas City now. And sooner or later, you got to play these teams and you got to find a way to beat them. We've talked about this with the Chiefs ad nauseum at the beginning of the year when they were losing to the Bills and the Titans, the Ravens and the Chargers. And it was just like the common theme that we kept hearing was just, well, these teams are really good. Well, you got to beat them sooner or later. And so the same thing applies to the Bills now. You're in a tough spot. You started hot. You've had some tough times. If anything, I was surprised by how physical they were in that game. I thought they showed a lot more toughness than they've showed in some of these kind of games before when they've been pushed around. But again, it comes back to the quarterback, it comes back to the play caller, and it comes back to that defense being able to get over and not having a Pro Bowl, all-pro corner available to them anymore.
And Eric, what do you think? Tell me, is this just a game where the elements were such a part of the equation that there's just no way to really assign blame or crown a champion out of the AFC East because of it, because it was such an odd game?
I think it was an odd game for sure. And I think Jeff said, I think Jeff brought up a good point that, it's not just about being Kansas City or beating Kansas City anymore. I was looking here, the Chiefs in 19 were first in yards allowed to wide receivers. They were second in 2020. The Bills this year are first allowing yards to wide receivers, right? Like they're literally blueprinting what the Chiefs are doing. And like we said before, when the whole league is sort of trying to zig while the Chiefs zag and you zag with the Chiefs, it's going to be harder for you. And I think, that's obviously what we've seen. And I don't necessarily, I think the road's going to be harder for them. But that doesn't mean, they can't do it. I think they're a great team. I think that their coach is very good. One of the top 5 or 6 in the NFL. And so I think they'll be fine. That doesn't mean that the loss to the Patriots is meaningless. It just means that, we're not going to overreact to any one game, especially those in the elements.
Do we give some credit, though, to Bill Belichick? The fact that he's the guy that figures out the elements best? I mean, did he figure it out, or is it just like, listen, this is going to be a coin flip game. I'm willing to just pound away. Is this genius, Jeff, or is it just like, really, this is taking football back 50 years and nothing should be read into it?
Well, I'm a big Belichick fan, obviously, for what he's done over the last 20 years. Sometimes, as Sean McDermott mentioned, he gets a little too much credit for his genius. Like sometimes it's just common sense. Like you can't throw the football in that kind of weather consistently, and you have a team that is built to do this kind of stuff. There were times when I watched the game, especially from the end zone camera, when the Patriots were on defense, it looked way bigger than the Bills on both sides of football. Really, it's like they looked like a lot. It was like watching one of those games when you play Madden, when you can just supersize some of the defenders and have them be bigger than everybody else. And so, I think he built this team with the mindset of being physical, of being tough, of having a strong run game, being very tough defensively. And in this kind of game, that's what shows through. My problem with the Bills, and it's been an annual problem since Josh Allen's been there or been playing at a high level, is that they always seem to put it all on him to make the plays, as opposed to having other options to go to. So that game to me was more about a team that had a coach who knew how to deal with these situations, and a team that had a coach who felt like, we got a star quarterback, he'll make the plays and win the game for us.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point, right? I do think that they've gotten him help, right? Like, Diggs was somebody who gave him help. Obviously, they drafted, Gabriel Davis, Marquez Stevenson. They got Beasley, from the Dallas Cowboys. They got Emmanuel Sanders from the Saints. Like, they've gotten him help in the passing game. But to your point, they don't really run the football, and they do put it on him. I think obviously that's rational in today's NFL. If you're going to concentrate on one spot, you err on the side of being a pass first team. But, we're seeing the limitations of that. You're also just seeing, like, he hasn't played quite as well. He has, he and Big Ben going into last week, I made this, I ran this stat for Peter right before he wrote his article. Those two were tied for the most turnover-worthy plays since December of last year. So, like, I was just looking at the Steelers, but Josh Allen was putting the ball in harm's way as much as he was on totally. So that was a little bit surprising. It's like Allen is a little bit high variance, right? In that he still can, kill. He can hurt you more, I think. And in Kansas City, we see that issue. We see that issue with respect to, like, Pat too. So it'll be interesting to see if he can improve, because I think when he's playing at his best, think of like the second half of last year's regular season, like, they're hard to beat, but like when he's off a little bit, as you said, the whole thing caves because he's the one they depend on most.
Yeah, I will tell you this. Bill Belichick seems to check every box on what he's supposed to do, right? Last year was the one time he has to regroup a little bit. He loses Tom Brady. If he, like, you can say 6 Super Bowls, he's the greatest of all time, right? There's a lot of people that will do it. There's a lot of people that will say, hey, it was more Tom Brady than him. What does he have to do to end any discussion? Like, Nick Saban in college football has ended all discussion. Has all discussion ended about who the greatest NFL coach is, or is there something that still needs to be accomplished for Bill Belichick to carry that title? And can he do it with just one championship this year?
I think it's already been decided, and it's been decided because he's coaching. His success is coming in an era when it's very hard to sustain success. It's built to not sustain success. Rosters turnover, salary cap is very limiting in certain cases. He was able to, one, find Tom Brady, which is probably the greatest draft pick ever now. But two, he's been able to figure out what his team needs. Last year, I feel like was a lot of humble pie for him to eat. And he got to a place where, like all these coaches do, where you feel like, hey, I got everything figured out. Know what I got to do. I've been having a great run of success, but you still need players. And so when you look at their offense now, their defense now, you got better players. What they were trotting out there at the end of Tom Brady's run on offense and with Cam Newton last year wasn't getting it done. And so you go out and get a couple good tight ends. You go out and get some faster receivers who can make more play with the balls in their hands. You get a bigger offensive line. But more importantly, you get guys like Christian Barmore. You get guys like Matthew Judon. You get some linebackers back who know your system well. And then all of a sudden, you're a genius again. And so, I think, all due respect to the Bill Walshes and the Jimmy Johnsons and the Chuck Knowles and all these people who won championships, multiple championships, it's what he's done over the course of 20 years. And if he's able to win a championship this year, it just cements it for me. But yeah, I don't think anybody is ever going to do what he's done with what he's had to face.
Yeah, listen, I'll say this. I won't give it to him undisputed right now. Like, I'd be happy to sit and have a discussion and talk about it. I think he does have to get the championship without Tom Brady. I mean, I think that's big. If he goes and lays an egg in the first round, this doesn't smell any more accomplished than Andy Reid with Alex Smith, Marty Schottenheimer with Steve DeBerg, right? Like, there's this, and he's earned it. 6 championships, 9 appearances in the Super Bowl. That, well, he's just going to add one. Now that he's got a winning record again, he's just going to add one. This game was a freak show game, right? And I think when they play again against the Bills, I think the Bills will win. Unless it's going to be 60-mile-an-hour wind again, I think the Bills will win. I think I give great credit to Belichick for getting this win, but I think it totally leveled the playing field. And I'm fine with him being, if somebody's like, he's definitely the number 1 coach, don't argue with me. I won't. I'm not going to waste my time. Your mind is set. But I think there's still a couple of boxes to check to make it undisputed.
Yeah, but what coaches won without great players? I just don't understand
Joe Gibbs. I didn't say without great players. Nobody wins with bad players. But Joe Gibbs won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks, and none of them will ever even sniff the Hall of Fame.
And is he the best coach in the football history then?
What I have said is I don't know what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is, but if you have a Mount Rushmore, Joe Gibbs is definitely on it because that's the greatest accomplishment in NFL championship history.
What do you
3
think, Eric?
Super Bowls, 3 different quarterbacks, and none of them will ever even, forget about what size they are for a Hall of Fame jacket. They're not getting anywhere near it. That is like, that is giant as far as coaching goes. So no,
and in a division. And in a division where every other team was good, right? There was, the Giants and, the Cowboys and the, football team. They were all like trading divisions. Didn't he win one with was Theismann a Hall of Famer?
No, Theismann is not a Hall of Famer. He won
well, that's the better question. How many Hall of Fame quarterbacks were winning championships in the 80s outside of Joe Montana?
There's that too. I mean, yeah, I agree. I think obviously with Belichick, there's always going to be that question of because this is going to be only his 3rd winning season, his 2nd playoff season without Brady. So that's going to be tricky. He's only won 1 playoff game without Brady. But yeah, I mean I think they do have to, I think he's greatest of all time just because I think who else are you going to pick? Are you going to pick Jimmy Johnson? Jimmy Johnson has the best personnel decision in the history of football, right? But that would, but his longevity and his time with the Dolphins wasn't great. After that, who is it? I mean, is it Don Shula? Because Shula
it could be Don Shula, it could be Bill
Don
Walsh.
Shula's record with backup quarterbacks was 10 games over 500.
You have to listen to the statement first. It's not who wins by a nose. Leaning at the tape. I said, what does it take for him to be? He is the consensus best coach of all time. And I'm fine with that. I said I wouldn't argue that. My point is, what does he have to do to be where it's unquestionable? Because I will make you a case that if he never wins a championship without Tom Brady, you can say the only difference between Marty Schottenheimer and Bill Belichick is Tom Brady.
Yeah, but he found Tom Brady. That's the whole point. It's not like Mike Shanahan, who's coaching John Elway, who was already one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of football before he got him. It's not like Jimmy Johnson getting Troy Aikman with the 1st round pick. It's like most of the coaches you're talking about outside of Bill Walsh got quarterbacks who were highly drafted. I mean, to go out and find Tom Brady and turn him into Tom Brady, so it's part of his coaching.
Well, and he coached.
Wait a minute. So waking up with a golden egg under your ass one day, when in the 6th round you got a guy who you passed on 5 times. Listen, I will give him credit.
Well, they had a pretty good quarterback there too, right? It's like they didn't have a bum in place. It's like they had Drew Bledsoe there.
But Scott Pioli, who definitely needs the resume builder, is the first guy to say, if we knew what Tom Brady was going to be, we wouldn't have waited till the 6th round, right? There is an element of this was just a guy. I mean, and they put him in there. Look, they get the credit because they took him. I'm not trying to take any credit away from Bill Belichick. I'm just saying to be undisputed, right? Michael Jordan's not even undisputed best NBA player of all time. There are disputes. LeBron James, his name is out there. Wilt Chamberlain. There are people you can throw out there. I'm saying to be hands down the best there ever was. And there's not even an argument to make because that's Nick Saban. Nick Saban's that guy in college football. I'm just saying I don't think the case is quite as strong for Belichick. I think if he wins this year with a rookie quarterback that was the fourth quarterback taken, he'll be undisputed. Like there was a point where Tom Brady, I think, became the best quarterback, but he wasn't undisputed, right? Undisputed for me came about Super Bowl. It actually came in losing to the Broncos in the AFC Championship game where he was totally outgunned and he fought them tooth and nail all the way to the end. But probably about his fifth Super Bowl, Tom Brady became undisputed. But he was arguably the best one.
So who else is in the conversation then?
For a long time, Peyton Manning. I think you.
No, I mean, coaching conversation.
Like I said, I think Joe Gibbs, Bill Parcells. I think there are a lot of guys that did a lot and have other things that they've done. Like I said, Joe Gibbs' accomplishment, and I brought it up, and you said, well, who was winning Super Bowls out there with Hall? I can't even remember what the point was about Montana.
Just that a lot of teams won Super Bowls with mediocre quarterbacks in the 80s. Jim McMahon, Jeff Hostetler, Phil Simms. A lot of teams were winning with those. I don't think it was some great accomplishment that Joe Gibbs won with these guys. I think he had great teams, and he just plopped guys in there, and they won.
I think it's a great accomplishment. I think the fact that he was elbowing through Bill Parcells, an Eagles team that was good enough to go and play for a Super Bowl, a Cowboys team that early on in his tenure was still winning 12 games during the course of the year, fighting his way through that division and going toe-to-toe with Bill Walsh, who is an iconic figure and one of the greatest offensive minds of all times, who did have the better quarterback definitively throughout the time, and he still cashed for 3 championships. I mean, he was not wading through the armpit that was the AFC East for 20 years.
Then why is Joe Gibbs not getting that kind of love? I mean, I've never heard anybody champion him.
Well, I mean, Joe Gibbs made the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he did. But I'm saying nobody's talking about him as being the greatest coach ever.
I think it's because he operated in the 80s when Bill Walsh was changing the game of football, and that was kind of like they were like Bill Walsh changed the game of football and his Super Bowl. There's also another thing that like we're overlooking is the 82 and 87 Super Bowls were both in strike shortened years. So like the 82 Super Bowl, everybody's like, oh, it was just 9 games, blah, blah, blah. And then the 87 year they had Scabs, and actually that was like a good coaching performance by him and Bobby Beathard for getting the Scabs to be the best version of that. But it was just different, right? Like the 49ers had they had the 4 Super Bowls in that decade, right? And that obviously overshadows what Gibbs was doing, even though what Gibbs is doing was clearly great.
And listen, I don't mean to turn this into a Joe Gibbs celebration, right? But the point is, I think it's remarkable what he did. I think it's underrated. I think what he did is one of the greatest coaching accomplishments in football because it's not today, but it was. We're not talking about 1942 where the quarterback was irrelevant. The quarterback still mattered, and he coached Mark Rippon into an MVP season. And Mark Rippon's a jag amongst quarterbacks, but he had the best season in football that year. I think he did a lot of things. I think a lot of rules were changed because of the guy. Like he was stashing Mark Rippon for like 5 years on the IR. And when he became an MVP, everyone went, all right, enough of this, Joe. We're not letting you develop these guys. Anyway, we can move. I just think to make it where it's slam dunk and there's no conversation, because I think there's no conversation in college football. And I think that he needs one more championship, and he needs it without Tom Brady. Otherwise, to your point about the Hall of Fame quarterbacks, it's just about the quarterback, and none of the coaches deserve any credit.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting viewpoint of it. I just feel like you win 6 championships, no one else has done that. That's enough for me. That's kind of like, I don't know how else you want to judge it aside from that. I don't think you have to parse it into who they had playing for them, because I think they all had great players.
Yeah, no doubt. It takes great players, and you better be an asset in acquiring those great players, whether you're the guy who has the final call as the general manager or just along for the ride and vetoing the bad ones and okaying the good ones. How does a guy like Joe Brady go from God's gift to offensive football in the college ranks to then a genius who's moving the ball and keeping the Panthers in contention last year after Christian McCaffrey goes down to being fired right now?
I'll say I think it's the incentives by Matt Rhule to not look like a complete idiot, right? Like when you look at like the general manager hire was in most cases engineered by him. The Sam Darnold trade was very much engineered by him. You see Teddy Bridgewater doing better in Denver than he was in Carolina. And you got to blame somebody. You can't blame yourself. And I think Carolina is like, going to go along for the ride because, his contract is 6 years or whatever. Right. So to me, I think that it's sort of like they're just deferring blame to somebody who is less powerful.
Yeah. I mean, it's politics. I mean, you're not bringing Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and a whole bunch of other offensive guys with you to Carolina. So you've got less talent to work with. But secondly, to Eric's point, it's like I was trying to think about this when we put this topic up. Who was the last offensive coordinator in college to come to the pro level and just dominate? I think it's a totally different game because, first of all, you're facing better talent on defense. You're facing people who can take away what you do well. And so do I think it's weird that he got fired in the way he did? Yeah, but I also understand, as Eric's saying, that this is a situation where somebody needs to be the scapegoat. And Joe Brady probably thought it was better for him to go to the Panthers and launch himself into a head coaching candidacy by taking over that offense. And he just found out that it's a snake pit in this game if you get with the wrong people.
Is this more an indictment on Rhule than it is Brady?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, without question. I mean, he hired a guy. If you hire a guy, you're firing him a year and a half later in the middle of the season. Yeah, it's all on you.
Is this the beginning of the end? Is this the beginning of the end for Matt Rhule?
I never liked to hire to begin with. And so I say this every time we talk about college coaches coming in the NFL. And I give Cliff Kingsbury credit for what he's done there. I think he's benefited in Arizona from a lot of shrewd personnel moves by Steve Keim and really a more talented quarterback than we thought he was getting in Kyler Murray. And so he's done things there that have been very surprising. But most of these guys who come in from college football come in with a lot of – and I know Rhule had been an assistant coach at some point. But it's a different game. And when you get to this level and you figure that out and you find out these players aren't going to ride with you unless you can, one, get them paid, first and foremost. It's not about winning. It's about getting guys paid. And then if you can get them to wins, that's great too. The smart coaches figure that out. I just think that a guy like Matt Rhule, he impressed David Tepper, by being a sweatshirt wearing guy, being a jersey guy, whatever he is. And when it came down to it, he's like every other coach is going to come into the NFL from that level, aside from Cliff Kingsbury. He's going to struggle.
Eric, he did not get the kind of money he got because there wasn't a bidding war, right? Reportedly, the Giants were interested in him.
Two of the really smart franchises in the NFL right now going, the Carolina Panthers and the New York Giants, bidding for the services of Matt Rhule.
Bob Glauber was on my radio show today and said that on the conference call with the New York media last week, he pretty much just went on and on about how much he loved the Giants, right? He's like, it's like he was saying, I wish I had the Giants job, which to me is, to Jeff's point, not getting the pro game. Like that's stuff that doesn't need to get back to your players. Like people could talk about Andy Reid and coach speak and being boring and Bill Belichick's mumbling, no answer responses, but they never say something stupid. They never piss off their players, right? Like that is part of treating pro players like men. Is it not, Jeff?
Yeah. I thought you're talking to Eric.
I mean, because you've covered a lot of these. I mean, and I know Eric has sat with a lot of coaches and general managers in this league. But I mean, there's a method to the madness of being boring.
I think you look at the coaches. I look at Jim Harbaugh. I look at Pete Carroll. I look at Jimmy Johnson. Some of the more recent coaches who've come from college football into the NFL. I know Pete Carroll had been there and left the USC and came back to it. I think the commonality you see in that is one, you have to have something about you that gets people to listen, that gets people to pay attention to you. When Jim Harbaugh went to San Francisco from Stanford, He'd been an ex-player. He knew what players needed to hear. He's a little bit crazy, which helps because people kind of don't know how to deal with that, get taken aback, catch people's attention. But end of the day, there was a method to the madness. And the clock's always ticking on these kind of guys because, again, the players know if you don't, even with these contracts they're signing now, they know you got a couple years to work out here. And most of us are going to outlast you. And so why should we listen? Why should we believe in you once we start seeing flaws? And I think Matt Rhule was done the minute Teddy Bridgewater started talking about how jacked up the practices were last year. So that's the first red flag you saw that led to what happened with Joe Brady. Like, what are we doing over here? And Teddy Bridgewater is not the kind of guy who's going to go out and just put people on blast for no reason. And so if he's out there saying that, I guarantee you every other guy in that locker room was looking at Matt Rhule sideways. So, yeah, to your point, you're not going to win these guys over with rah-rah speeches and look what I did at Baylor and all this other stuff. You're going to win them over by having a game plan and treating them like men.
Eric, I mean, you're ready to move on from any quarterback at any time the moment you don't think he's any good. Is that what needs to happen when it comes to Matt Rhule and the Carolina Panthers? It's up. I mean, Jeff says the sign when it was over was last year. You know, the guy can't coach next year, can he?
Yeah, I think the problem is that, you know, his contract is guaranteed, right? Like, you know, so
you're the last guy. Wait a minute. You're the last guy I'd expect to answer that way. Right? because no, seriously, let me point out why. Because I'm not asking you to predict. The prediction is they won't fire him, and it's because of hubris. And yes, they're throwing the money out the window. They don't want to admit they're wrong yet. They're going to hope that it turns around, even though if Jeff's right, and I think most people are looking at it going, this ain't going to work. If you've come to that conclusion, the money's gone. You're not getting it back just by leaving him there. You're just damaging your franchise further, right? So
yeah, I understand the sunk cost thing, and that's why I don't think they're going to do it. Yeah, I mean, they should. I mean, he doesn't look fit for this, right? But yeah, I mean, I would probably take a stab at letting him go then. I mean, but the problem is do you have the ability to make this? Because like the GM that you picked was picked by him, so you do fire your GM one year in. Like it to me, it's just like it's a level of dysfunction that is kind of not optimal, right? And this year's not a great quarterback class, so the next guy you bring in is not going to have the greatest ability either to do his job. So it's tricky.
I think it is tricky, but I think the one thing, you know, sitting around hoping it gets better. I mean, the old adage, hope in one hand, crap in the other one. Let me know which one fills up faster, right? Like if you're down to hoping, like, you know, and I'm always amazed at how much these guys love to throw around how much they make, except for when it comes to tax time and when it comes to, you know, getting hundreds of millions of dollars for their stadiums to be built. But the rest of the time, they're happy to sit on their yacht, Jerry Jones style, and flash around during the draft, how much cash they got. But the moment they got to throw around what for them are a couple of nickels to fire a coach, it's like, no, it's just spite. They're not going to do it. Right? You want to stay with Matt Rhule because you think it's going to work? Stay with Matt Rhule. Give everybody the middle finger, right? You know, I mean, they were calling for Bill Belichick's head with like a 1-4 start in 2001, his first Super Bowl year. He'd had a 5-11 first year, was 1-4, and Bob Kraft's, you know, stood his ground. He proved to be right. I mean, there's a reason to say that, like, this is just part of the process to get there. To Matt Rhule's credit, I mean, Eric, he's at least firing on quarterbacks, right? I mean, they're not just sitting pat. They're at least trying.
I don't think trading for Sam Darnold is trying, though. Like, I especially given, like, where they were drafting, like, did they not think they'd get a crack at Trey Lance, Mac Jones, or Justin Fields? Like, you know, I get in hindsight, it's easy to go back and be like, oh, Justin Fields was there at 8 or wherever they were picking, but like I don't like Sam Darnold stinks, and he was terrible no matter who the coach of the Jets was. And I know that they like to give crap to you know, Adam Gase, but like, you know, Darnold was not even that great at USC. Like it was like to me, yes, they've taken swings, but they really haven't done a good job.
Yeah, it's amazing they get a pass for going the Sam Darnold route when he's right. They had the opportunity. They were picking ahead of Denver, and we killed Denver for not taking Justin Fields. We killed these people for not taking Mac Jones. They opted out way before they even had a chance to do it.
Yeah, listen, I was never big on Fields. I've always been Team Mac Jones. And so to your point, you're in the get it right business. I don't really care what everybody else said. I don't care that everybody else was lobbying for Justin Fields. Everybody else isn't GMing your team. Like if Mac Jones ends up being a stud, hide the pooch because he's screwed. There's no way around it. You're supposed to get that right. And if you don't, that there's grounds for termination. I will, unlike Eric though, I will give some points for saying, okay, maybe Sam Darnold's our Alex Smith, right? Like we'll get him, Alex Smith with Jim Harbaugh, not Alex Smith that proven himself to be at least a quality quarterback with Harbaugh with the Niners. But hey, maybe this is the guy that's just had a bunch of morons around him. Let's see if we can find it. I'll at least give him credit for saying, okay, this isn't good enough. Let's try this. But at some point, what you try has to make you better at the quarterback position. And that definitely didn't happen. Let's move to the Chiefs and Raiders. This is a game the Chiefs hammered the Raiders before. The expectation is that they'll do it again. If they do that, is that now, Jeff, put them in the front of the line for the Super Bowl favorites, or is that something that's got to happen on down the road? Your Super Bowl favorites. We know how tough your scale is.
Yeah. I don't really have a Super Bowl favorite right now. And I don't know if I picked one, I would feel that confident in it working out. And so I don't think this is a year where you get all this credit for saying in week 13 or 14 that this is the best team in the league. I think that changes from week to week now. And so I think the Patriots are the best team in the AFC right now. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're going to be the ones that end up representing the AFC in the Super Bowl and hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. I think there's two. I think the difference between if there are 12, 13 teams in the AFC right now who are competing for playoff spots, the difference between the top team and the difference between the number 13 team is razor thin. And so I think all these teams are in a similar boat. I think they all have their own flaws. Do I think the Chiefs are playing at a level where they should be in that conversation to win the AFC? Yeah, totally. It's hard to look at a 5-game winning streak and diminish it. But I also feel like, and I said this on the radio, the Border Patrol this morning, is that when their offense is not playing at a high level, they're not special anymore. And so once you're not special, then you're like everybody else. It's just a matter of how you play on any given day. I think that, and there aren't that many teams out there who are special, by the way. I think the Packers have that with the way they've been playing. I think the Bucs have it with their offense and Brady, and Arizona's had it to a certain extent. They've been pretty consistent, but most teams don't have that quality. So do I think, one, I don't think it's going to be a blowout the second time around. I think the Raiders will play them differently. But two, I think, if the Chiefs are able to win this game and beat the Chargers next week, they should be certainly one of the top 2 or 3 teams you look at to win the AFC.
Jeff calls it a Survivor Series, the way I'm hearing it. Whoever gets tribal immunity.
Hunger Games.
It's going to emerge as the winner. Is it an open crapshoot in your mind, Eric?
I think it almost has to be, just given what New England also has to go through, right? They have to go through Indianapolis and Buffalo again. I think that obviously is going to test them more than Monday night tested them, because, Monday night was sort of this random game. I think, but to your point, you guys' point, like the Chiefs, as we continue to look, like I think Aaron Schatz, who, works for Football Outsider, said the Chiefs have had, I think, the 3rd hardest schedule of opposing offenses this year, and they're 8th in points. Like, it seems like every single time we sort of like move the bar on the Chiefs and how they're performing defensively. And so to me, I think that actually we'll see some more ingredients. We'll continue to see these games, as we'll go back and look and be like, oh, well, were the Raiders even that good? We forget about their 5-2 start. Or, the Chargers are kind of a flash in the pan. The Chiefs, in hindsight, they shouldn't have even lost to them in week 3. And like we continue to do this, and I think that's where we're going to end up with on this team is that the schedule is not going to look that bad for them because we're going to continuously see them play well.
Is this, Eric's called it like, it's sometimes you steal Super Bowls, right? It's your year and you don't get it done. It gets taken from you. We talked about that in terms of like going back to like 19 was the Ravens Super Bowl. They were the team everybody was talking about. They were the 1 seed. They were the new sexy team, and the Chiefs stole it from them. 20 was the Chiefs Super Bowl. They were 14-1 in games that they tried for mailing in the last one and went all the way back and defending champs. The Bucs stole it. Whose Super Bowl is it this year? Or is that the point? There isn't anybody.
I think if you look at the NFC side of it,
okay.
I mean, the NFC's best teams look a lot better than the AFC's best teams. So if I'm betting on a team to win a championship, I'm looking at the Bucs as they're getting better in their secondary and getting their defensive guys back with Tom Brady and all those guys that won it last year. Looking at the Packers with the way they played, the way their defense has performed without a lot of key players in there. I'm looking at Arizona. Those 3 teams, as long as if the Cowboys and the Rams can figure things out, they'd be in the mix. I think all those teams are better than when they're at full strength and playing at their best, are better than anybody in the AFC right now.
What if the Bills handle the Bucs? If the Bills handle the Bucs this Sunday, will that give you a different view of the 2 conferences?
That would change the conversation a little bit. I think the Bills, at the end of all this, I was asked this morning about that. Are they done? Are they in trouble in it? They're still one of the best 3 teams in the AFC in my mind, just based off what they've accomplished over the last couple of years and what they were doing at the start of this year. So I think that they would definitely be in the conversation, but I don't know if there's going to be a team that emerges where you say this is the team that should be winning the championship, especially not on the AFC side of it. I think it's just too wide open, and you've seen too many teams who have been really good have their struggles.
Eric, you kind of coined the phrase. Is it someone's Super Bowl this year?
I think it's Tampa's Super Bowl this year. Like, I think that, they're the favorites right now. They're they were second favorites coming in. I know that they've had losses, one to LA, one to Washington. They haven't been, uniformly great. But I think it's their Super Bowl. I think, and that's why, like, you think about like a team has, won back-to-back Super Bowls since 2004, right? And oftentimes it's like, you think about the Giants in 2007, they win a Super Bowl. Then 2008, they're 13-3 or 12-4 or whatever it was. And then they get upset by the Andy Reid's Eagles in the divisional. Like like the Packers won in 10, and then 11, they're 15-1, and then the Giants stole their Super Bowl. Like, oftentimes it's the defending champ trying to run it back. And we saw it last year with the Chiefs. And I think, that is going to be, what, the issue is going to be for Tampa Bay is, can they keep it together this long? If the league starts to engineer to stop them, are they going to have a left hand? And we've already seen some of the things that can come up with Antonio Brown and, so on and so forth, and injuries as well.
Yeah, and the secondary being banged up, those kind of things have been issues at times for the team. Speaking of banged up, the Ravens continue to take on water. Early on, that was the story after they had lost to the Raiders, was how hurt they were. And then all they did was win. And that seemed to put all the injuries on the back burner. Is this an injury too far now as they continue to pile up for the Ravens?
I don't know how they survived this. And I thought that a couple of weeks ago. They are just as the Chiefs are built to win with an elite offense, they are built to win with an elite defense and a quarterback who can do some amazing things for you. And you start taking away the Marlon Humphreys and the Marcus Petersons. I mean, they've lost almost their entire secondary of a team that likes to play man coverage. And it's hard to go out and find guys to do what they're asking them to do. And so when you don't, Eric's brought this up many times, when you don't have an elite pass rusher, even though always, trending in that direction, at some point he might turn into that. When you don't have guys who can lock up on the outside and you want to scheme up blitzes, it's hard to win games. You're going to give up a lot of big plays. And that just puts even more pressure on your quarterback who's playing without, all pro left tackle and playing without, all the running backs he expected to have. it's a testimony to John Harbaugh and that staff that they've been able to go into every game and create a game plan that has allowed them to get to 8 wins. But to go down the stretch and to think this team is going to keep doing that and get in the postseason, if they get in the postseason, there'll be teams fighting to get them, to get an opportunity to play against them because they will be so beaten up and so vulnerable. It'd be the easiest playoff win you ever got.
Yeah, I know people specifically who thought the Marlon Humphrey injury was sort of like the last straw, because he did so much for them. He played inside, he played outside. He was wonderful at basically everything. And, Peters, and that's why Peters was such a value add to them, but not necessarily the Rams when, you end up being able to have Peters kind of do his thing because Marlon Humphrey can, do everything and kind of cover up Peters' deficiencies. And that was, what the Chiefs didn't have near the end of Peters' era. And the other thing is the quarterback's just not playing that well right now. I mean, you look at handicap in this game, the total on the game in Cleveland, Baltimore, and I know there's going to be some weather, is 42 points. Like the total in Pittsburgh, Baltimore was, I believe, 41.5 by the time it closed. Lamar Jackson, it has a passer rating of 90 when not pressured this year. 90 is the league average passer rating for all passes, right? So Lamar, even when he gets a clean pocket, and again, it's not all Lamar. It's, Sammy Watkins is dropping a ton of balls and all this kind of stuff. The receiving core isn't great and has been injured at times. But that just shows you the ineptitude of that offense at times. And, it eventually it breaks. And I do agree, just being able to win those games says a lot about John Harbaugh. But, make no mistake, Jeff's correct. These teams want the Ravens in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that the Ravens are a team that is easily dealt with for a lot of the teams. I think that they are on empty, and it's been a remarkable run. And I think what'll happen is people get down on Lamar Jackson, and he has his limits, but I think a lot of it is just go back. They also, Matthew Judon, who's playing great football for the Patriots, was a Baltimore Raven. And Eric, you've made the point many times that the Ravens have been really good at being able to walk away from good football players and just reload with the next wave. But sometimes you do get caught, right? It's just it's, a year where it's they made the right move big picture wise. And I think they always do, but are they a little bit susceptible? We've talked about it to, be in the Tampa Bay Rays, a team that's always in contention and always makes the right move big picture, but never makes the necessary move or the overreach to win a championship. Is this yet another example of the Ravens in that situation?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Jason Away, Tyson Tyus Bowser, I think is the name. I always get these names confused. Justin Houston, Pernell, those guys, those were the right choices money wise for them, and they're being productive. Matthew Judon was actually not that productive in Baltimore, on a per play basis. He's blossoming into a great player in New England. Funny, when you have good coaching, you have that in certain circumstances. That was the right move. Moving on from CJ Mosley was the right move. But this year it's just been a little bit of everything, right? And I think that's that's the issue is, unfortunately for the Ravens, they just haven't been able to overcome the injuries. And why would if the Chiefs had this issue, right? If Orlando Brown got hurt and
Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill got hurt.
Travis. I mean, they do have Mark Andrews has had a wonderful year this year. The drop notwithstanding on the not being able to catch it with one hand on the 2-pointer. He's had a wonderful year. But yeah, if the Chiefs had some of their best players on defense hurt, I mean, we already saw it when Ward wasn't playing early in the year, when Gay was out, it was a mess, right? So we can all empathize with the Ravens. I'm not going to be crying too much given how good they've been over the last few years, though.
Yeah, it is their accomplishment, and they will be back very quickly. They'll regroup the cap and have it ready to go. Can the Cowboys, Jeff, actually blow the NFC East? Is it possible for them, a division that was given to them, I think 5 weeks ago? Can they actually complete the absolute, folding of the tent and not win this?
This game will tell us a lot against Washington. They're going to see Washington twice in the next 2 weeks, or and then before the end of the year's over, and they're going to see the Eagles twice. And so the way both those teams have played in the last month or so, they're far more effective and far more capable of giving the Cowboys problems. I mean, the problems the Cowboys have, the same thing we just mentioned with the Ravens to a lesser degree, is that their injuries are starting to affect them, especially in the running game. Look at that team in the first 8 weeks of the season. They were one of the best running teams in the NFL, which allowed Dak Prescott to be an MVP candidate. And they're getting half the yards now with a running back in Zeke Elliott, who's playing with a banged up knee. And it's looking a lot different there right now. Even though they've gotten DeMarcus Ware back, and I don't know, Randy Gregory's out for the season now. I think he's gone for a while, isn't he? Not the year.
I think he's short-term IR.
It's indefinite.
Season,
okay. But again, I think so many of these things, they are at their best when they have the running game going. And I think they're trying to figure out who they are without that element. But for some reason, Washington starts to play well in November, December. Quietly, no one's talking about their defense, but they've been on a 4-game win streak and they haven't given up many points. And they beat the Buccaneers, which kind of got this whole thing rolling for them. So, and the Eagles have rediscovered themselves and reinvented themselves. And you talk about the Chiefs' schedule, those games look a lot better now because those teams are a lot better. You're seeing some of the talent play out there. And if you're talking about, things that can give the Cowboys problems, we know running the football does. And if the quarterback, Jalen Hurts, is healthy and ready to go, that could be a problematic game because the Eagles have the best rushing attack in the NFL right now. We know that the Washington football team is not afraid of playing big games and rising up to the occasion at this time of year. So, yeah, a 2-game lead looks pretty good right now, but they could drop all 4 of those games easily.
Well, and that's the thing is if the football team could just win against the Cowboys, they'll even it up, right? Because they've got 2 games head-to-head against them. We can talk about this, and I think it is relevant because the Cowboys are the incredible folding franchise and have been ever since Jimmy Johnson, or at least ever since Barry Switzer, stood watch on the last few Jimmy Johnson guys to walk out the door. They've made no serious threat whatsoever to winning a championship. All that being said, if they're a 4-point favorite for a reason, Eric, and if the Cowboys do what the odds makers seem to think they're going to do, then this will be over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we wrote an article on PFF.com. We're doing the Steve Kornacki thing on Football Night in America, where we do the whole if they win, if they lose thing. And it is one of those things. If Washington were to pull this game off as 4.5-point underdogs, they would be 1-3 to win that division. And if they don't, they'll be basically eliminated from the division title consideration. So it is a big time leverage game, and it's one that Dallas has struggled at times to win. Last year they got swept. I know Dak was out for both games, but last year they got swept by Washington pretty convincingly in both outings. There have been Dak games where, I always think about the old school Cowboys putting those ugly blue uniforms on at RFK and having to play that physical type of game. And I sort of see that now. And I think that the Dallas Cowboys, should win this game. I think they have, this sounds weird from me coming from an offense guy, but they have the best player on the field Sunday in Micah Parsons right now. Like a guy who's playing like Lawrence Taylor from a pass rushing, but also run defense and coverage, sort of play. And they should very much win this. No Chase Young for Washington again, obviously. And one of the things that I found was interesting when I was doing the, perfectly blocked plays analysis, Antonio Gibson's getting a lot of chances on perfectly blocked plays, and he's averaging 5 yards a carry on perfectly blocked plays, which sounds like reasonable, but like it's like the good guys are like 7-8 yards a carry. Jonathan Taylor's 10 yards a carry this year when his play is blocked up. Antonio Gibson's 5. Like, can he muster some of that athleticism that we all marveled at when he came out of Memphis? So I like the Dallas Cowboys to win this game, but I do think it'll be close. I think it'll be a barn burner.
Would Antonio Gibson be better cast in a Deebo Samuel, AJ Brown role? I think the slot receiver is going to become a hybrid running back. The Cordarrelle Patterson.
You sound like Urban Meyer.
I think he's quite successful in the college game, by the way. When he could get talented players, but I think it's an effective, spot. Is that Gibson was a wideout at Memphis, and they love his ability to catch the ball as a running back. Maybe his ability to run the ball as a wideout would be more effective.
I think the issue though is that those guys get hurt. Like Debo's currently injured. Patterson. I mean, the thing with Patterson is that he's 6'3", 230. Like that's the whole deal with him. And, he is, I think, anti-fragile to an extent. And it's also took him 8 years to figure out that hybrid role, or for a team to figure out that hybrid role for him. So I think it's a little bit easier said than done. But yeah, it does seem like the kind of role for him would be good. I know Curtis Samuel's on that team, and again, like he struggled to find his way, COVID and injuries and stuff like that. So we'll see what they can end up doing with him.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting. Monday Night Football, Cards and Rams. Jeff, what's at stake in this game? Is this the Cardinals' chance to cement themselves as the number one team? Is it the Rams' chance? We talked about this, I think, last week or the week before. Everyone's down on the Rams. Not that beating up on the Jaguars is the great elixir or anything, but if they win this game, it's obviously pretty big. And their losses were coming to good teams. That's one thing that can be said about the losing streak that the Rams did have. What's at stake in the Monday Night Football game?
Sean McVay's title as one of the great offensive minds, one of the great coaches in the NFL. I mean, I'm being facetious, but got to start winning these games. You can't. It's as much as he's done for that franchise in the last 4 years, and I think he's deserved a ton of credit for what they've done. He's also created a culture that is just not that tough-minded. And it speaks volumes that the Cardinals kicked the crap out of them, earlier this year, in SoFi. It's very hard to imagine them going to Arizona and having a similar success. And I think when you do what they've done in terms of building that franchise with a lot of big mega blockbuster deals, and you put a lot of pressure on your coach to deliver. And so it's not just about having this sexy roster that's like, all these big name players. It's like he's got to do the Phil Jackson routine. He's got to bring it all together. And if he's losing twice to Cliff Kingsbury, people were laughing at when he came into the NFL because he had this gimmicky offense and this dwarf-like quarterback, it's going to be a long road for him moving forward.
Yeah. Cliff Kingsbury, tough, right? Like that's not exactly what the painting was. Cliff Kingsbury, tough guy coach, but his team definitely plays tough. Eric, what do you think's at stake here?
Yeah, the interesting thing is the Rams, even with a win on Monday, don't get the tiebreaker with Arizona. If you go through all the common opponents and all that stuff, the Rams, to win the NFC West, have to have a better record than the Cardinals at the end. So like this basically all but eliminates them from that contention. They're basically, I mean, we're almost assured Cowboys, Rams, if 4 or 5 game in the NFC if we get a loss here. I think the Cardinals are the example of sort of sticking to the Steve Keim thing, right? And like they're the example that the Cardinals can look at and say, okay, we got Steve Wilkes, he stunk. Let's get him out of here after 1 year. We got Josh Rosen, he stunk. Let's get him out of here. They're the example of writing off losses without, and sort of, Steve Keim, this was your last chance, right? And then they go and they get Vance Joseph, who I think was one of the more underrated signings in the entire sort of like, a couple of years ago when he became the DC there. They go and get, I know Zaven Collins isn't playing a lot, but they go get Isaiah Simmons. Like they get more athletic on defense, right? Jordan Hicks was the guy they signed a couple of years ago. He's playing well, I think. They've withstood injuries. Like I think they're the most impressive team in football, given everything they've had to go through. And to me, if they beat the Rams again, like I'm going to pay a lot of attention because I think that it would be a sign of really, really asserting yourself as a team in the NFC. And then you could look at the Packers loss on Thursday Night Football and just say, we're going to write that off to noise, right? Like that's their loss. They get that one. That one's not deterministic of anything. For the Rams, they need to win this game convincingly. They have not beaten, other than Tampa Bay, a good team this year. They had the Giants win, the Jaguars win, the Houston win. Like they've had those, and they've struggled against the great teams other than Tampa. And so I think that this is a big game for them. And I think McVay has already cemented himself as a good offensive mind. It's just the rest of the stuff. It's the Les Snead stuff. It's the roster building stuff. And I think they fall short there.
I just want to come back. You're slapping the Cardinals on the back for quickly moving on Rosen, on Wilkes. But, so then Carolina should be moving on Matt Rhule.
I'm coming. I interpreted your past question as will they, and I just don't think they will.
Right. Should they?
Should they? But to me, it's again, the Panthers one's a lot stickier because you just did a GM search and you just had Matt Rhule basically have choice of the GM. If you blow it up, you're blowing up the coach and I think the general manager and new ownership and all. The Panthers are in much more. The Panthers are in much more transit phase. The Cardinals were basically Bidwell, Keim, and then a bunch of deck shuffling underneath that. And to me, that it was a little bit cleaner. But yeah, I mean, I think the Panthers should if they don't see some results here.
Well, I think the Panthers got stars in their eyes and decided Matt Rhule is it. And then they got into a bidding war, and it didn't matter what it took. They weren't going to lose to the Giants in a bidding war for Matt Rhule. And I think that might be a lesson for a completely unproven and actually a route that usually doesn't work, the college route. Don't slap big money down because I don't even know what Cliff Kingsbury's contract is, Jeff, right? The thing is, that was a move that was panned. He was going to be the offensive coordinator at USC, not the head coach, the offensive coordinator. There can't have been much of a bidding war. And I'm almost, I'll always give credit to people who are having success. And I give credit to the Cardinals. But I almost wonder, did they just back ass into this move? And, because when Cliff Kingsbury's name is being floated around at Oklahoma, his agent is very much saying he's not happy. He's not happy with his contract. And the Cardinals are needing a big push to try to get him signed. And so could it be that they screwed this up, that they made the right decision? They made the right move for the wrong reason. And now they'll screw it up.
He got the job because of the quarterback. He got the job because they were going to go down this road. We forget now that as great as Kyler Murray has played, and even though he was the first overall pick, there was a lot of gambling involved in this. They were going to go to an offense that was going to allow him to succeed, much like what the Ravens have done with Lamar Jackson, that nobody's been willing to try in the NFL, and certainly not with a quarterback that small. And so Cliff Kingsbury made sense just because it was a way to either cover their ass, or to say, we're going to try to make this work as best as possible. We're all in with it. Either way, he wasn't coming because he was going to revolutionize the NFL, what he was doing. It just made more sense to have somebody who knew Kyler Murray, knew this kind of offense, and could make it work quickly.
You give credit. I mean, you've been harsh. You and George on the PFF forecast have been pretty harsh on Cliff Kingsbury in the past. Is this just a good stretch? Are the Cardinals needing, what's the future with Kingsbury in the NFL and with the Cardinals, Eric?
I think you have to give credit where credit's due. I also think, last season they built an offense where I think, the target rate for DeAndre Hopkins was 28%, 29% of their offense. And so when defenses adjusted, they had no left hand. And then when Kyler got hurt, they couldn't move the football. And then this year, even when Hopkins was healthy, it was 19% of their targets. So there's been some evolution there where I think you have to give credit to Kingsbury for the changes there. And, getting people laughed at the AJ Green signing. He's been mostly okay. Christian Kirk's emerged as a pretty good player. Rondale Moore's done things. Chase Edmonds and James Conner have played well for them.
Zach Ertz.
Yeah. Who's on their offensive line? None of us know their offensive line, right? And so I do think we have to give credit to him. I mean, I always said, when he took over, their offense in 2018 was half a yard worse than the next worst offense in all of football. And he got them to the middle of the pack. And I always said, getting from bad to the middle of the pack is a lot easier than getting from the middle of the pack to elite, right? And staying there. And for half the season last year, they were a top 5 offense in terms of expected points. And they obviously regressed. And they've gotten back there this year. So kudos to him. I mean, I was very down on him for a while, but he's emerged for sure.
Yeah, there's no doubt. All right, Thursday Night Football is happening as we are having this conversation. If you're catching us via the podcast, it has not been pretty for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is it official? This is it. They're done. Stick a fork in them and stick a fork in Ben Roethlisberger, Jeff?
It feels that way. And then they'll go out next week and find a way to piece together a 13-12 win.
They might come back and win this game right now.
Exactly.
They got the ball back down, 2 touchdowns.
It is the Vikings we're talking about.
Yeah, we've seen this before. Huh?
I have Jefferson over 7.5 catches. He has 14 targets and 6 catches, none since halftime. I think he's dropped 3 balls this half.
Yeah. Dalvin Cook had 150 at halftime. He's probably got 160 now.
Yeah. So this is Minnesota Vikings football, guys. So buckle up.
Yeah, this is it.
Yeah, I think that they're very much like the Ravens, that they're just on fumes and they don't want to acknowledge it. And they made the mistake of going with Big Ben when the season started, hoping that they could create some magic there. I think they've got some elements that are worthwhile and helpful. I mean, when TJ Watt's on the field and healthy, I think he's been beat up again in this game. They've got a nice pass rush. They're able to create problems, but if they're not scoring points, that defense isn't as daunting as it should be, as it could be. And so it's just a bad mix. And again, they are probably good enough to get to 10-7 and with some ugly wins. But in the playoffs, could they be a serious threat? I don't see that happening. I think there are a lot more teams that are a lot more impressive. And I think at the end of the day, I think the Browns will get above them. I think the Bengals will stay above them. I think the Ravens might go down, but the Ravens might stay above them as well. So I'm not buying in. I just think there's too many flaws, especially on offense.
Steelers, any hope, Eric?
No. It's an absolute gift from God that they even have 6 wins to begin with. This is a team that almost lost to Detroit. I mean, these are 2 teams, both of whom cannot be.
Yeah, 2 teams. A team that lost and tied to Detroit are playing each other right now.
Yeah, that is true. Listen, the gift that was given, and by the way, make it 29-20, pending the extra point. I might be.
You're a little bit ahead of me right here.
I might be a little bit ahead. So
I need 2 more Jefferson catches.
God.
All of these things contribute to Justin Jefferson catching more balls.
Here we go.
But I have some Vikings -3, and I was chirping about it, and I'm like, and now I have to sit here and watch this nonsense. This is why I'm not a Vikings fan anymore, really, guys. Yeah. This is personified.
That's the longest throw Roethlisberger's made in this game, probably, right? That touchdown pass.
Probably. 29-20, they're going for 2, which of course is the right move, right?
Yes.
Eric, get it? Find out now what you gotta chase. You're going to score every possession. I agree. Sometimes Eric and I will disagree.
12 minutes left in this game.
Yeah.
So, but Jeff, wouldn't you rather know on defense whether you need 2 scores or 1 score?
Yeah. I would like
because
to
what
know.
you don't want to do is, let's say they stop the Vikings or whatever, and then the Pittsburgh Steelers go on this 8-minute drive, score, miss 2-point conversion, and then you're left the egg timers off and you're down and you lose by 2, right? So
you go now. Yeah, definitely you go now.
I think his point was that the Steelers have cut it to 9 and there's still 12 minutes. Not like you don't go for 2 at 12 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like this thing has been cut quickly.
They didn't get 2 points, though, right?
And God knows all the Vikings -3 bettors are sweating this one out now that it's just 9. And the Vikings are going to go run, screen here and punt and give the ball back to the Steelers. And run, screen is incoming. I think that's a tweet now.
I think it's perfect. Real quick before we go, got one to watch, one from this weekend, whether it's player, individual, coach, a game, a matchup, anything that's out there. I'll take a stab at this one first. 49ers, Bengals. My continued amazement at the coddling of the 49ers as a franchise, how Kyle Shanahan is, still a sub 500 coach and heralded as a genius. This is one he's favored in this game at the Bengals, right? They started as a dog. They're now favored at the Bengals. Deliver the goods, man. Unleash the fury. Let's see it happen. I think this is a big one for both. Like, I think Kyle Shanahan might actually start coming under some heat. I think it's a chance for the Bengals to flex some muscles. I like that game a lot. Jeff, you got anything this weekend you're high on?
Yeah, I'm going with the Bills. Josh Allen versus Tom Brady in a huge game for the Bills in terms of determining where they go from here. I like them in this game. I think that even though the Bucs are getting guys healthy and they're back in their secondary, that they still can be vulnerable back there. And with all those weapons and a much better forecast weather-wise than they got in Buffalo back on Monday night, that Josh Allen could have a big game and a big rebound.
Yeah, I love the Bills in that game, by the way. I think the Bills are definitely going to handle business. Eric, you got one that's your one to watch for this week?
Yeah, I do actually like laying the points. It's like a 1.5 for San Francisco. I remember week 2 of 2000 and was it 19 where they were similarly, it was like a pick 'em in Cincinnati, and how out to lunch we were back then with Andy Dalton's Bengals. It's a little bit different now, but I do think they still roll there. You know, I do like that Washington Dallas game. I do think we figure out a lot. So yeah, that's what I like.
The Heineke, season of announcing his presence continues. I still don't get how that's going on. That's why I like the Cowboys in that game. I think okay, enough of this crap. Enough of acting like this is a race. It's over.
Taylor Heineke's like that guy with the Chiefs way back in the
Tyler Thigpen.
Yeah, that's who I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Tyler Palco. Take your pick.
The guy was here with Chan Gailey. He was Chan Gailey's guy, right?
Yeah. Tyler Thigpen was Chan Gailey's guy. Absolutely. All right, that's going to do it for us here on 2 Deep. Thank you for joining us, whether you're catching us on the podcast. You can catch us streaming live every Thursday night at 9 Central. I know we've got people, frankly, literally all over the world listening to the podcast. So it's 9 o'clock Central time if you want to catch us via the stream. And, of course, the podcast always available wherever you get your podcast if you are catching us on the stream. So for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network and NFL.com, Eric Eager from Pro Football Focus. Check out their great work at NFL.com and PFF.com. My name is Soren Petro. You can catch my radio show at 810WHB.com. Thank you very much for joining us on 2 Deep.